Hello, it's Sonia here with the Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Wednesday, and that means it's the stitch of the week. So for today's stitch, I will be using my eye hook or 5.5mm hook. And for this stitch, you are going to need two colors. So I'm going to show you today how to do a very easy reversible colorwork stitch. You can use a variety of hook sizes or yarn types. I just don't suggest fuzzy or furry yarn because we are going to be doing a colorwork pattern and you want the pattern to show up, and if you're using fuzzy yarn it's kind of distracting. So when you're doing this, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to establish what is your color A or your main color and what is going to be your color B. So for me, I'm going to use my green here as my color A or my main color, and my tan is going to be color B. So to do this color work, and there are different ways of doing color work with crochet, but this is just one, and not all are reversible. Some you carry the yarn, and this one you do carry the yarn in a way, but it is a reversible project, which is really, really nice. And it just uses a basic stitch, a single crochet stitch. So to do this stitch pattern, we are going to be chaining 17. So I have my color A and I'm going to chain 17. Alright, so I'm going to just show you a little swatch, and it's just going to be a stitch pattern that it's going to be a checkerboard one, and you could use this technique for a variety of stitch patterns or charts. You can make pictures out of your yarn, which is really fun. I love doing that. And I do have a pattern that uses this technique, so I can certainly link that in the description box if you're interested in checking it out. Alright, so let's single crochet in the second chain from our hook, and what we're going to do is work in the back bump of our chain, and we're just going to work a single crochet in that second chain or second bump, and you're going to single crochet across. So at the end of my first row here, I'm going to have a total of 16 single crochet. So if you were following a chart and using this technique, you certainly want to pay attention to, what number of stitches that you need to have. Okay, so I've worked row 1, so I have 16 stitches here. So I'm going to work row 2. So this is going to be a border. I'm just making a border so it looks nice. And I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And I'm just going to single crochet in that first stitch right there, and just single crochet across for row 2. Again, I'm just creating, this is the border here. And then row 3, we're going to start with the actual stitch pattern. And depending on what pattern that you are making with this technique, you might not have a border, so it just depends. Okay, so we have row 2 completed, so let's get ready for row 3. And this will be the beginning of the colorwork section. So we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and I'm going to single crochet right in that same stitch with my color A. And I'm going to single crochet in the next stitch with color A. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off that stitch with color B, my tan here. So I just like to lay it on my hook there and pull that through to finish off the stitch. And I like to take the color A, just give it a little tug just to help complete that stitch so that it looks uniform and neat with the other one, so it matches it. So just give it a little tug. You don't want to pull too hard because then it's going to kink up the stitch and it's not going to look right. So you just just give it a gentle tug just until it matches the other one. So we're going to start the colorwork section. So now I have color B on my hook, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to carry color A across, and we'll pick it up as we need, and we will carry color B across too and pick it up as we need. So right now we are using color B, and I'm going to work 4 stitches with color B. So I have my color A, and I'm going to just single crochet around that color A with color B. And I do think I have a mittens project with using this technique. I have to review my patterns that I've made. So there's our first one, and I'm just going to single crochet around the next one. So it's like we're kind of sandwiching it in between, and we're going to work 4 stitches. So we have 3 right there, and we're going to work the 4th. So what we're going to do is we actually want to finish off stitch 4 with color B with color A. But before I do that, you want to make sure when you're carrying your yarn to give this a little tug, because sometimes it can, especially if you're working like a long project, like let's say you're using this technique with a blanket, sometimes the yarn that you're stitching across can kind of bunch up inside, and then you would actually have little loops, and you don't want that. So just give that a little tug so that it's just nice and smooth and uniform across. And again, you don't want to tug it too tight, but you just want it to be a nice straight line like that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I actually need to use this yarn now. I'm going to finish off that last stitch. And you can see better with this color. See how this part of the stitch, this part of the V, doesn't quite match up the others. So that's why I like to give that a little tug. So then now all the stitches look nice and uniform. Alright, so let's get ready to work with color A, and I'm just going to stitch around color B. So I'm working 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and here is stitch 4, and I'm going to pick up color B to finish that off. And just give that a tug to make sure that stitch it looks nice and neat. And we're going to work 4 more stitches with color B. So we're just making a simple checkerboard pattern here. So I'm stitching around color A. So there's my 4 stitch, and I'm going to finish off that one with color A. Okay, so let's finish out this row. I'm going to stitch across my color B here. So our last 2 stitches are color A. And we have our first row of our color work there. So now we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and begin row 4. So what you're going to need to do is we are going to need to stitch across this, because our first 2 stitches will always be color A. That's our border here. So for row 4, I'm just going to bring that guy up, and we're going to stitch around that for color A. So we've chained 1, turned our work, and I'm just going to give it a little tug. So you will see on the edges the color, but I think it looks kind of decorative. And we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, but now I am going to switch to color B and give color A a little tug. Make sure that stitch looks nice and neat, and we're going to work 4 stitches with color B, stitching around color A. So you'll notice when you do this, the fabric is a little bit thicker, which would be a nice stitch pattern for a blanket, nice and warm and cozy, or maybe a warm sweater or something like that. Alright, so now I need to finish this stitch off with color A. So definitely not a lightweight fabric for sure, unless you're using maybe lighter weight yarn. But I think this looks better using more of a denser yarn, to be honest. Alright, so let's continue across. I'm going to stitch across with color A. And we're finishing that off with color B. and then stitching around color A. So definitely not very difficult. The key with doing this type of color work is really just watching your tension so that your stitches look nice and even and the yarn is nicely sandwiched in between there. And we're finishing off this row with the last 2 stitches of color A and stitching around color B. And then we have worked row 4 there. So we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to work row 5. Okay, so we are going to stitch around color B. So our first 2 stitches are always going to be color A. So the colors, will peek through a little bit, but when you're looking at it as a whole, you're not really going to notice that too much. You're really going to see the pattern, your stitch pattern emerge, whatever it is. All right, so I'm switching to color B and stitching with the next 4 with color B around color A. But sometimes it can get twisted around. That's the only annoying thing. So you might want to use, some people like to use bobbins where they wind their colors around the bobbins to kind of help with it not to tangle as much. But I don't have any of those, so we just make do. So finishing off my last 2 stitches here. So there we go. We have worked row 5 there. So let's get ready for row 6. Okay, so row 6, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we are going to actually work the first 6 stitches will be color A because we're trying to create a checkerboard pattern, so we need to change it up here. So I'm going to be stitching across color B, or stitching around it I should say, not. And you can just see I'm kind of giving color B a little bit of a tug, so it does peek out a little bit on the sides, but not too bad. You can see it was trying to get tangled up in there. Okay, so now I'm going to finish off that stitch with color B. And before I do that, since I stitched across more stitches there, I'm definitely going to give color B a little bit of a tug before I finish that stitch off. Just to make sure we are not bunched up at all in there. And now I'm going to work 4 stitches with color B, stitching around color A. And finishing that stitch off, color A, and so now I'm going to stitch all the way across the rest of my row with color A, stitching around color B. So there we go, we have row 6. So row 7 and 8 are going to be a repeat of row 6. So I am going to do that off camera and I will meet you back. Okay, so we have finished up row 8. So let's get ready for row 9. So I'm going to chain 1, turning my work here, and I'm going to work my first 2 stitches with color A, stitching around color B. So 1, 2, and now I'm going to finish that stitch off with color B, because we are going to be repeating rows 3, 4, and 5. So the same pattern, so this is going to create the checkerboard. So 4 stitches with color B, and then 4 with color A, and then 4 with color B, and the last 2 with color A. Okay, so there is that row. So I'm going to work rows 10 and 11 off camera, and that is a repeat of the row we just did. So again, repeat of rows 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to do that, and I will meet you back at the end of row 11. Okay, so we finished up row 11 here. So now we just need to complete our little stitch pattern. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn. I'm not going to carry color B anymore, as I don't need to, and we're just going to work the final 2 rows with color A, just like how we started in the beginning, because that's our border. So just working single crochet across. So I'm going to work row 12 here, and I'll work row 13, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so now we have completed our little mini checkerboard there. So we have our border around, so you can see that peeking through a little bit, and as I said, it's reversible. So there's the other side, and then on the other side you see the color B peeking through a little bit. So that if that really bothered you, let's say you were making a blanket out of this, you could certainly make a border. And what I would do is, when I was stitching around my border, I would have my first round as a single crochet round, and what you can do is I would use color A here, and I would just stitch around the color B, and then to kind of hide it. But it really doesn't bother me. I think it's fine, but it just depends on what your preference is. But I just think this is a nice little technique, and you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of ends, which is why I like this technique. Because of that reason. The less ends to weave in, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you enjoyed this Stitch of the Week, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.